It's a very busy day at Big Data London today. How are you finding the event?
I found it amazing. It's like double the size of last year. So many people walking around, so many good conversations. So I'm really having a blast.
Yeah, there's a lot of conversations going on, that's for sure. And what are some of those conversations that you've overheard? Are there any trends that you can see emerging at the event?
Sure. So two things that I've been talking a lot about in the last few days is, one is, of course, kind of Gen AI. So how can Gen AI help in data management? And so we recently released SodaGPT, for example, which is all about making sure that less technical users can very easily get involved in writing checks on data, providing their domain expertise, and bringing that to checks and ultimately to prevention of data issues. So that's one area. Another area is data contracts. There's a lot of talk about contracts in data management simply because it is a tool for communication, really, before we release code and changes to make sure that there's no breaking changes downstream. We, in data, deal a lot with breaking changes. Everything is always on fire, so that's really what data contracts is all about. So those two trends, I think, are heavily discussed here and found very excited to participate in.
Yeah, 100%. Sounds great. And obviously, as you mentioned, AI is an incredibly hot topic. But does it bring any challenges to the data space? And how does Soda help solve those challenges?
I think the biggest challenge really is all about we are distributed as data teams, right? We sit within marketing, we sit in a product team, and we don't really communicate very well because we live in our own silos, right? In our own organizational boundaries. But unfortunately, when we make changes, it has an impact on everyone else.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest challenge today really is starting to communicate about those changes before we make those changes. That is going to really transform how data teams operate and move them away from firefighting problems all the time to becoming more focused on building net new data products.
Yeah, makes sense. And one last question for you today. If you could give one prediction for the future of data, what would it be and why?
Oh, the future of data. The biggest prediction for me is that we are applying a lot of software engineering principles, right? So data engineers are really at the center of driving the change. And I think we'll go to a state where a lot of our the things we want to do in data is controlled as codes, is controlled by engineers, and will ultimately automate a lot of the manual processes that we currently do after the fact. Like when we, for example, are cataloging data, we describe our data based on what's in production, right? But that's kind of a flawed system. So we're going to do it much earlier. It's going to live alongside our data product codes, and that's truly going to transform how we work in data.